We're still on the subject of the gift of the word of knowledge and the gift of the word of wisdom. And it's nice to see that you have come back to join us. We're really thrilled that you're interested in the gifts of the Spirit. We're going to be studying a little bit more regarding the teaching of Jesus knew their thoughts. And I know that there can be great confusion coming into this, people thinking, well, maybe Jesus was a, quote, mind reader. We want to understand again, and I must repeat myself because I like people to have a thorough understanding of what we're trying to say so that there's no confusion left in your minds regarding it. And I might add, if I ever say anything that you don't quite understand and you say, well, no, that's not scriptural, or I don't understand it, I trust you'll feel free to let us know, because we would certainly like to clarify anything, and I would probably like to then have a question and an answer period from those of you who would like to inquire, and so that we can be able to answer your questions. We'd like to see that there is no confusion left in your hearts. And so we're reading from John chapter 12, verses 23 and primarily verses 33. Jesus answered them and said, "The hour is come that the Son of Man should be glorified." Why would Jesus say this? He is being very much aware at this point that the time has come when he is going to die. How could he possibly know this? Do you know when you're going to die? Do you? Have no idea at all when you're going to die? I don't either. I just know I've been allotted so many years, and trusting, barring sickness, accident, and death, I'll, live out those years. But looking down at verse 33, I think maybe we ought to look at verse 30. Then answered and said Jesus, "This voice came not because of me, but for your sakes. Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out. And I, if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me." This, he said, signifying what death he should die. Not only does he know his hour to come, but also the type of death that he should die, in that he knew that he would now die on the cross as well. So this had to be something that God had revealed to him. He knew that his hour had come, and also he is very keenly aware of this, so much so that he comes right out and says this to them, though they themselves were not aware of the type of death that, of course, Jesus would die. And then also, if you look at John chapter 13 and verse 1, "Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew," K-N-E-W, "that his hour was come." Again, it's referring to the fact that he knows now he is going to die. "And that his hour was come that he should depart out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end." And now comes the time for the Last Supper. But you note in a number of places, in references are given, that Jesus knew when his hour was come. I just wanted to cover this first, just before I went into further understanding on Jesus knowing thoughts. I can remember at a time when I was raising my children and I was working on a part-time job. And the time that I remember very vividly about it was that I was studying the Word of God to some great extent. And every opportunity, I would take the Word, I would get my dictionary, and I would look up even the simplest of words, just the simplest of words. Strangely enough, that old Bible can become really alive if you just, even the words that you think you know the meanings of, take them and see how much more it makes the book live. So I was doing this. Also, for about 3 or 4 days, I was sensing the living presence of Jesus Christ. I was singing beautiful songs of comfort and praise and just worship. I just felt the presence of God so much surrounding me. I didn't know why particularly that this was the case, but I'm learning, I'm trying to understand. Now I'm getting to a place, whenever I sense the presence of God, I say, "God, I know you're going to do something. I don't know what it is, but you're going to do something." So we get acquainted with how God manifests his presence to us. That morning, I got up, and the phrase, the scripture verse that came to my mind, but the phrase primarily regarding mortal. I wondered what the word meant. We are mortal creatures. And then I thought of the opposite, God being immortal. Mortal, well, I knew it had something to do with death, but whatever it was. So I took my dictionary out, and indeed it said mortal means subject to die. Again, I didn't quite know what it all meant. But then what happened was I was getting ready to go to work that morning. And all of a sudden, I become very, very much aware of the presence of, let's say, someone in the room with me. No form, no manifestation from without, but that presence was as if my nephew was there, my nephew. And he was in his police uniform. Now, I had never seen my nephew in his police uniform, but I just felt like he was there. Have you ever experienced this? I think some of us have experienced a thing like this before. We sense the presence of God in a very marked way, and we can sense the presence of other individuals, and we just believe that God can give us revelation and knowledge concerning these things, and all of a sudden, then we see someone who has come and is now present there with us without their actual being there. Maybe if I could describe it like this, that if you were to pick up, hear the telephone ringing, and you would pick up the phone, and you would almost know who was on the other end of the line, right? It's almost as if you sort of feel their presence there. Well, this is what I was sensing at that given time. What else was happening in that? As I say, I just felt his presence there. Time went by, and I walked to work, which wasn't too far away from where I was at. And in that process, I got to work and put my coat up on the hanger. And then, following this, the telephone rang. Someone said to me, Mary, it's for you. And I said, oh, okay. And I went over and picked up the telephone. And as I answered it, here is my niece on the other end of the line, and she is 60 miles away, and she's crying and crying. She said, oh, Auntie, Mother has just passed away. Now, her mother was my sister, and she was only 47 years old. She says, Mother has died of a heart attack very, very suddenly this morning, and the whole family was devastated. I said, look, honey, what I will do is this. I will leave my job right now, and I'll come up to where you are, and I'll just hang in there, honey. Just trust God. Hang in there, and I'll be right there to help you as soon as I possibly can. I got my coat on. Well, I had phoned, first of all, to have someone come to pick me up, and I got outside the office area, and as I was standing there, who should drive up but my nephew in his police car? And I saw him, and he stopped the car, and he said, Auntie, I don't know if you have heard or not, but Mother just passed away this morning. He said, I just finished getting the word. And I said, yes, I have just found out from your sister. And he said, look, I'm going up to where they live. Would you like to come with me? So this is the way then that God had arranged this particular situation. You see, during the course of the week before I had experienced the fact my sister had passed away, God had been preparing me. It was like a buffer. He was giving me songs of comfort. He had let me know that, in essence, there was going to be a death in the family, because he gave me this word, mortal. There was going to be a death. And I sort of felt like somebody was going to die, but, you know, I didn't feel morbid. It was something like knowing something, but not feeling morbid or not feeling fearful about it. And so when I went up there, then I was now able to become, help to be a comfort to the family. And instead of falling apart and not knowing where I'm at, because they were in a terrible state of devastation at this point, so they needed also someone to help them. So God had given me then an extra strength then to be a comfort to them, as he had already prepared me ahead of time for this. I think this is the same principle. God gave unto Jesus Christ that extra strength, even though he knew that the situation he was going to have to go through would be very devastating, yet he gave him that extra strength to so do. And this is what's beautiful about this. And I know that there has been other people that have experienced the fact that they seem to be aware that someone is going to die. When my own father passed away, my mother had gone into the hospital room to visit him, and he indicated to her that he felt the presence of Jesus all around his bed. He just kept saying, I'm going to glory, I feel the presence of Jesus, and indeed that very day he died. So oftentimes this does happen, and the revelation and the knowledge of going home to be with the Lord is something that believers then can certainly have that hope and that faith and that trust, knowing that when we die, our souls go to that eternal glory to be with even Jesus Christ, who came to die for us. Now we want to go to Matthew chapter 12 and also verse 22, because here we see something in the life of Jesus Christ. And this one then is verse 22. We'll start. Then was brought unto him, that is unto Jesus, one possessed with a devil, blind and dumb, and he healed him insomuch that the blind and dumb both spoke and saw. And all the people were amazed and said, Is not this the Son of David? And when the Pharisees heard it, they said, This fellow doth not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of devils. And Jesus knew their thoughts, and said unto them, Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then shall his kingdom stand? And if I by Beelzebub cast out devils, by whom do your children cast them out? Therefore they shall be your judges. He goes on to talk about this, and I'm going to come back into this story again when we come into the gift of the discerning of spirits, because this is very important. But my main purpose now is to show you the gift of the word of knowledge in the story. Jesus also uses the gift of the word of wisdom. 3 gifts are exercised here. But primarily the thing we want to know is that Jesus knew their thoughts. He knew what they were thinking. They were thinking this. This man is casting out devils by Satan. Now, I told you before, the only reason that Jesus basically knew people's thoughts was so that he could bring truth where there was error. What they were thinking was complete error. Jesus was not casting out devils by Satan. He was casting out devils by the power of God. That's what he was doing. And so, therefore, what had been taught was error. And Jesus knew their thoughts. It was revealed to him that this was not truth. And so as a result, he proceeded to tell them then that a house divided against itself cannot stand. Satan does not go around casting out Satan. Neither is Satan in the healing business. We have long attributed the works of God to Satan. We say that when a person is sick and they get well, Satan heals them. But when somebody gets sick, they blame God for it, and they say God made him sick. Yeah, this is what, don't you hear this often? Sure you do. And I get just a little bit tired of the works of God being attributed to Satan and the works of Satan being attributed to God. I think we've got to get our heads screwed on straight and find out where the truth of the matter is. And so this is why Jesus said what he said. So many times, and as you read through the Gospels, you'll see that Jesus did indeed know their thoughts. Now we're going to go back to John chapter 2 and see something else. And we will also read here verses 24 and 25. Possibly we could check verse 23 too. Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover in the feast day, many believed in his name when they saw the miracles which he did. Well, this happens, I believe, all the time. Whenever you find the power of God working, and many miracles are performed, and the gifts of the Spirit in operation, you will find that people will believe if they've never come to a knowledge of Jesus Christ. But also note something else here. But Jesus did not commit himself unto them, because he knew all men, and needed not that any should testify of man, for he knew what was in man. Does it say that Jesus went around reading their thoughts all the time? Do you mean to say that if Jesus were to come in here right now, come up right here, that he would stand in front of me and try and read my thoughts? Do you know, I think we should give Jesus credit for a lot more than what we give him credit for sometimes. Personally, at this point, I don't think I would really want to know your thoughts. Some of you might be sitting there thinking that, gee, I wish Mary would fix her dress, it's hanging crooked. Or somebody else might be thinking, her hair is out of place. I wish that little lump of hair would go down and it wouldn't stand up so high. I wish she would quit scratching her ear. I don't like the way that she says something. And we're constantly thinking of, if I knew what you were thinking, I'd probably get out of here and run out of the building, Besides all that, you see, there is much more profit in not knowing a person's all of their little intricate thoughts. I really wouldn't want to know what everybody's thinking. I mean, besides, there's also a lot of skeletons in people's closets too, and I don't like looking at skeletons either. Why then would Jesus, as I say, know the people's thoughts? And again, it's only for that reason that he would know the thoughts, so that he could then touch the life of that individual and bring them to a greater or a closer knowledge of Jesus Christ. Oftentimes when I'm ministering to people, the Lord does reveal their thoughts. And there have been occasions in meetings when I have said someone in here is thinking such and such a thing. I'll never forget the time when I was talking about Jesus is Lord, and indeed he does exercise and did exercise all of the gifts of the Spirit. And I'll never forget someone in my meeting was thinking this, and the Lord revealed it. There's someone thinking this right now, that Jesus didn't need the gifts of the Spirit because he was God. And I came right out and said it. And I said, there's someone right here right now that's thinking that Jesus, because he was Jesus, he was God, he didn't need the gifts of the Spirit. And someone just put their hand to their mouth like this, thinking that they'd said it out loud. I knew it was then at that point. There's got to be a profit and a purpose to the exercise of the gift of the word of knowledge and the gift of the word of wisdom. And in this portion that we were reading, where Jesus did not commit himself unto all men because he knew all men, it does not say because he read their thoughts all the time. What do we mean by it, he knew all men? Actually, he knew human nature. He didn't commit himself to his disciples or to anybody because he knew the human nature of man. Some of us, I think, probably can relate to this in that we have had a very, very close friend, right? We tell that friend our own personal feelings and the way we are, maybe things that we do. And that friend says, look, I will be true to you the rest of my life. I'd never do anything to hurt you. And what happens? I come back and maybe just knife you right in the back, eh? I think we've all probably had a turn at trusting a person, and we find that person then is unfaithful to that which we would say to them. But by the same token, I think Jesus knew all men in that he knew that the nature of man would not be consistent. He knew that we had sinful natures. And human beings are prone to do just about anything. I think I told you the story in one of the other seminars about Peter, didn't I? How Peter had denied Jesus. Peter said, oh, no, I'd never deny you, Lord. Oh, I will stick with you right to the end. I'll just be a true buddy boy. There's no way I would do anything against you, Lord. And then we also found that rooster crowed 3 times. Jesus told him it was going to crow 3 times, and he was going to crow once, and Peter was going to deny him 3 times before that rooster crowed in the morning. And indeed, that's exactly what happened. He knew what was in man, and he knew that he had to teach Peter as well regarding his own human nature. So it isn't saying here in this portion that Jesus is reading their thoughts or reading their minds. It just says he knew what was in man. And that's what's beautiful about this story, in that I think this is why we can feel comfortable and could feel comfortable about Jesus in person being right with us. I think we need to feel comfortable being in the presence of one another. I had people say to me, Mary, I'm afraid that when I come up to you or start to talk to you, you're just looking right through me. Some people even avoid me like the plague for fear that they think that I'm looking into their minds and into their hearts and seeing what's there. And I think one of the greatest compliments that people can pay me is say, Mary, I feel comfortable around you. Even though they know I exercise the gifts of the Spirit, because I'm not interested in trying to read their minds. I just accept them at face value for who they are. And then if God reveals something, and then that's when it sticks out like a sore thumb, and I say, oh, that's a revelation. I know that one. But God gives us a special love for people, and I think if we have our mind clouded with wanting to peer into people's lives, then of course, we're going to see what we're looking for. But we want to see the best in people. We want to love and see the best. I'd like you to return next time, would you, and join us, and we're going to tell you some more about this gift of the word of knowledge.